good thing. Question for you.
I know, they're a rowdy bunch.
Water.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get rolling. We're going to do something a little different tonight, and we're glad everybody's here. If you remember, I gave a little brief summary during the Sunday morning sermon right after we got back. It was the Sunday after we returned. But we wanted to give a more extended overview of the trip that we took to Germany. We're going to give as much detail as we can, but because of the group we worked with, we're not going to give last names. That allows us to put it on the internet. It allows us to provide as much information as we can. If you want more information, we'd be glad to give it to you after the service. But that's just kind of a precursor of some of the reasons why we'll describe things a certain way. But a really good trip. We hope that you maybe get motivated to participate in the future because of this. But before we continue any further, let's pray together. Father, we praise you. Lord, we know that your word tells us that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to declare your message. Lord, that responsibility is here. It's with our neighbors, those we interact with, and Father, it's around the globe. That in some places there is little to no Christian witness. Father, we're blessed here in this community with a lot of Christians that can proclaim the gospel. For that we give you praise. But Father, there are places on this globe where there are very few, and there are people that have yet to hear. Lord, we're going to speak of some of those places today. But people that you still track down and show your grace to. So Father, we pray that we be mindful of the responsibility you've given to us as your people. We be mindful of the responsibility you've given us in your word. And Father, this would be an opportunity for us to look ahead to what you would have us each to take hold of our piece of your mission and to serve as you called us to. So Lord, guide us. Use this time for your purposes. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Just to kind of give you an idea, if at any point along the way you have a question, stop us. We don't want to wait till the end and then you forget what your question is. So if you have a question along the way, stop us and ask. We'd be glad to answer it because we want you to get an idea of how this trip worked, what the purpose of it was. So please, if you have a question along the way, just pause us and we'd be glad to answer it to the best of our abilities. And based on what you know, the two of us, that's somewhat limited. And we're going to bounce off each other as we work through this. But this trip was the end of March. It was based around the Festival of Nowruz. Nowruz is the Persian New Year festival. We were one of two teams that the church sent out. The other team went to Central Asian country to participate in a gospel outreach festival where we were able to distribute literature. We went to participate with a group of workers through our mission board that serves in Germany, in Hamburg, Germany. And what they're looking to do is to do that type of outreach project in their city. The difficulty is the population they're working with of Persians. And when we think of Persians, what you have to think of is any country that ends in the word stan. Mainly for them, it's people that are in this city are refugees from Afghanistan and Iran. Talking about those places, but primarily people they minister to have fled those countries because of war, because of economic persecution, and in some cases because of religious persecution, that they came to faith before they fled, And because they were persecuted for their Christian faith, they left. And what they want to do is to use the opportunity of this New Year festival to reach out to those that have yet to respond to the gospel, those that are still not Christians. That's what we're doing in these other countries, these other areas of the world. And our mission board really has gained a reputation, both positively and negatively, mainly from the Iranian government, of the effectiveness of these outreaches. And so what you begin to have the opportunity to do, what we have the opportunity to do as a local church, is to participate in that. Once we hit the ground, the first thing we were introduced to was this concert. And we were told that this concert was probably the largest gathering of Persian Christians in the world. But if you wanted to get in a room with Christians from places like Iran, Afghanistan, any Christian from a Persian background, we were in the room with perhaps the largest gathering of Christians from that background that you would find on the globe. And for me, that was somewhat humbling, that this was a room a little bit larger than this one. But there weren't that many people. And to think that for them, this was a large gathering was both humbling, but at the same time, it gave you a scope of the work. That they were gathering to sing praise to the Lord, they were gathering in celebration, but it was just a perspective of the need of gospel proclamation. You see, there were mixed age groups. You had all kinds of age ranges in this group, different socioeconomic brackets. They were there to celebrate their New Year festival. And then, we were there in the back. Most of us stood out like a sore thumb. I had the advantage of fitting in a little bit. That's a good thing about my complexion. I can do ministry among Persians, and they start talking the language to me. Larry, not so much.
So I'll take this next picture, Louis, thank you. So this was one of the evenings where we had gathered together to share stories and have some fellowship time at Brian and Crystal's home. And Brian and Crystal are the IMB missionaries serving in Hamburg, Germany, along with their 2 children. I will speak more about them here in a little bit. But the young man with the glasses on your left-hand side, his name is Saber. And Saber wanted to take this picture of us, and then he sent it to me through Messenger after I got back. And he and I started exchanging some messages back and forth. And I want to show you one of the messages that he shared with me. If you could just take 30 seconds to read that. If you can read it from where you're sitting, or I can read it out loud. Can you read it in the back, or do I need to read it out loud? You can't read it.
And to give you an idea, as you're reading, most of these young men, most of the refugees, they have had to operate in multiple languages. So they're coming into Germany. They've grown up either speaking Farsi or Dari. Those are their languages of origin. As a requirement of the German government, they have to learn German to retain German citizenship within a certain period of time. And many of them, by their choice, will learn English. So imagine a young man, in Saber's case, in his early 20s, has left his family, has left his home country, has fled it because the circumstances just are so oppressive in Iran. Even for the citizens of that country, his family has told him, leave, it's better for you to do that. He only speaks the native language of Farsi. He gets to Germany, he doesn't speak any of the language. He then has to learn German. And on top of that, he's choosing to learn English. So these young men are extremely driven. They're trying to advance themselves. At the same time, any job skills that they had in their original country, Germany says, we don't accept any of your training. So Iran is a rather developed country. In Saber's case, Saber was trained as a veterinarian assistant. But once he gets to Germany, the German government tells him, you can't use that here. You have to start all over again. There was another young man who had been trained as a heating and air tech in Iran. Gets to Germany, and even though Germany has need for these skills, they tell them, you can't do that here. You have to start all over again. But in order to start all over again, you have to know German. And then, so you see how this is frustrating for them. They want to work, they want to participate, they want to add value to the society that they're in, but what they're being told is, stop, you can't use anything that you know. You have to start all over again. And so there's a sense of frustration that builds in a lot of these young men, but at the same time, there's a great deal of joy.
Yeah, that's great, Liz. Thank you. So, one of the primary missions of Brian and Crystal's, I guess their calling, if you will, as IMB missionaries in this part of the world, is to specifically reach out to what we call People's Persian People's Group, PPG. And specifically there, they're looking to meet Persians through different means, introduce them to Christ, invite them to fellowship, get to know them, have meals in their home, and then beyond that, to disciple these young men and women. And it's primarily men, I think, for Brian. Crystal has a women's and children's outreach that we can talk about a little bit later here. But what caught me in this message back from Saber was that he thanks Jesus and the Father. If you were here this morning in the sermon from 1 John, Jesus is very clear in the scriptures that to know the Father, you have to know Jesus, and vice versa. And for a young man who was raised Muslim and coming from that faith, that's totally turning his back on the Muslim faith. In the Muslim faith, they recognize Jesus, they think he's a great prophet, but he was not God, and they only recognize the fact there's one God, and not the Trinity. The Trinity is a totally foreign concept to them. So this really spoke to me that Saber and other young disciples, if you will, are really being well discipled through the mission of Brian and Crystal, and the other believers that have joined hands with Brian and Crystal to disciple these individuals.
And Saber's a great example of that. After we left, in case you're wondering, I did send Saber a message eventually, but Saber went to another Central Asian country to actually meet up with his family. They had not seen his family in a considerable amount of time, so they met in a neutral country where all of them could have a together time. He was able to see his parents and his sister, and they had a vacation. And then his older brother, who fled the country as well, who was in Greece, he traveled to Greece to spend time with his brother. While in Greece, he and his brother actually served in one of the major refugee camps in Greece. And so Saber gave about a week of his time during what was a break in his educational training in Germany to serve other refugees, to help them get established, to help them think through, okay, what is going to be your plan from this point to getting established in a European country and to getting your feet underneath you down the road. That he's using his experience to help other people go through this process. So being able to see that there's a genuine sense of compassion and love and caring that is being developed in these young men and young women as well. That they're not just getting there and saying, thank God I'm not back where it was. They're then turning back and really investing in others. And what we're seeing is it's a great change that the Lord is doing in hearts. Question.
Is there a reason they flee to Germany knowing, or did they know in advance that they were going to have all these challenges to face? Was there another country they could go to that wouldn't have as many challenges to face?
Germany is the location of the fewest challenges, believe it or not. If you remember, back during the refugee crisis a number of years ago, I think Brian said at their peak, in his city alone, they were receiving, I want to say like 7,000 people a day at their train station, refugees. What happened was that when the refugee crisis happened a number of years ago, Angela Merkel, the Prime Minister of Germany, gave a famous speech, and she put her arms out and said, Germany has open arms to the refugees of the world. And basically Germany said, if you can get here, we will take you. Part of that is a sense of social guilt that the German people have, that they're still trying to undo the Holocaust. There's still a sense, when you're there, you can still feel it. We visited a concentration camp while we were there, and you can still feel the social guilt. And so part of taking in refugees is their effort to undo the social guilt of World War II. The difficulty, and we'll show some of the ways that they tried to help the refugees, is they took in so many people at once, they really didn't have the logistics to do it. When Germans excel in logistics, that's what they do well. That's why World War II was a horrible thing, but what you saw was Germans are good at logistics. One of the things of World War II, they could move people. They did it in horrible ways, but they could do things with logistics. With these refugees, what they found out was there was a limit to that. They provide these people, they provide the refugees money, they provide them housing, the difficulty, language training, education. It's all funded by government tax money. Now the tax rate there you would not want to pay, I can guarantee you that. But it's all government funded. The difficulty is at some point these individuals have to then become income producing members of the German economy. That's what they're struggling with currently, is how do you convert that? And then Germany is kind of stuck in this cycle at this point. But Germany is probably the best place for them to be in the entire continent of Europe.
Okay, so we were invited over for the New Year's celebration of Nowruz, which in English means New Day. It's celebrated in the spring equinox, so the first day of spring, new beginnings. It's a 3,000-year-old festival that is celebrated over 13 days by families and friends. They get together, they have all these traditions, and they do lay out specific food items that evening. I'm sure on New Year's we have our traditions too, but they have a list of seven items. They all begin with S in the Farsi language. Here are a couple examples: something made of apples, something with garlic, something with vinegar, my favorite sweet pudding, sprouts, and they put coins out. And for the children, it's a great time because one of the goals is for the children to get their pockets filled with change by relatives and friends over the 13 days. So we were invited into the home of, what's his name? Ardalan. Ardalan's a believer, he's Persian. He's lived there has been there for a number of years. I want to say at least 5, right? He and his family. They have a little boy. They invited our entire team in that evening to a very nice spread of fruit, vegetables, cookies, these little sweets that were really sweet and tasted well.
It's celebrated for 13 days, and you feel like there's 13 courses to the meal.
Exactly.
You eat and drink tea, and eat and drink tea, and eat and drink tea.
So it happened to be at the time of March Madness, so Adelan had internet cable, and he had one of the games on for us, just for us, when we walked in, just as a special treat. But there's Adelan on, I guess your left, his son, and then that's Brian, our missionary. You can see the additional food that they had prepared.
Yeah, and on this table is think of Thanksgiving. I mean, this is their type of Thanksgiving meal. So you walk into a table spread from everything from fresh fruit to bakery items, candy, you're drinking hot tea. I mean, you feel like you're stuffed, and then they said, now for the meal, right? and on this table is everything from braised goat neck, which when they first tell you, you kind of go, whoa, but it is delicious. As somebody who grew up in a picky home, it is delicious. This in the bottom right corner is like a yogurt dish that has green onion in it. Delicious as well. The red-ish dish is stewed tomatoes and a chicken dish. Ardalan is their kitchen committee for their church. That he does cooking. He ran a small business in Iran. He sold industrial products. So if you had a backhoe, if you had any type of large equipment, he owned a business that basically supplied anything you needed for industrial equipment. Then he came to Germany, and the Germans said, you can't work. You can't do sales. You can't do anything with industrial equipment. We know you've done this for 20, 30 years, but now that you're here, you can't do anything. And so they told him you have to go back to school, and you have to get certification in doing something as simple as driving a cab. So here's a man who was an accomplished business owner, who they're basically telling me he has to start all over again. And he's found creative ways to make money. Let's just say he found ways to make money off of the Iranian government, which we found out while we were eating dinner that night, and our workers there were rather surprised about it because they always wondered how Ardalan paid his bills. And he just decided to share with the American that looked Persian. He spilled his beans to them. And they found out, well, you're making money off the Iranian government. But real neat guy, really, his son speaks multiple languages fluently. They basically told him, this is your home, and you need to be a productive citizen. And really great family, wonderful food. In the middle, that's actually a stack of rice. What they will do is they will cook the rice so that the bottom is almost caramelized. And in Persian culture, the caramelized portion of the rice is considered a delicacy, and that's given to the honored guests. That they give that caramelized portion of the rice a delicacy. So the next time you burn rice, just say it's Persian. To your honored guests. So give it to the honored guests tonight.
So this is us sitting around and just enjoying the meal, sharing stories, chatting. I took the opportunity to take some pictures here of the guests and the team.
These two young ladies, the woman in the middle is Crystal. That's Brian's wife. She's the other member of the couple that serves in the city. The two ladies on her side, and then this the head on the right of the picture with the dark hair. They're brothers and sisters. Brother and sisters. There's one more sister. So there's three sisters and one brother. They all fled Iran together. They were in their early to mid-30s. So imagine you're a young man in your early to mid-30s. You fled your country, and you have to come to a new place, and you have to share an apartment, because all four of them had to share an apartment when they first got up to Germany. So you're an early to mid-30s man sharing an apartment with your early to mid-30s sisters. And they all had long black hair, so I can imagine what that place was like. And when I say apartment,
One bathroom.
one bathroom for the floor. Right? We'll show you a picture of it later, but the housing units that Germany created for these refugees are essentially storage containers. They're building a home in forest using similar technology, but it's a 10 by 15 foot storage container. So this young man was in a 10 by 15 foot storage container with his three sisters. And they lived there for almost 5 years. That's the commitment they're making, to leave a place of such grave oppression. That's how bad things are in these countries. It just gives you a framework of the commitment they're making, but to sit with them, happiest people you'd ever meet. because all of that commitment was worth it to start a new life. This is another member of the team that serves there, Allison. Allison will actually be on stateside here soon, and possibly might come and visit us here in Calvary. She served in another Central Asian country for our mission board for a number of years. One of our most experienced workers in our mission board, has seen things that are just incredible, and experienced great loss personally because of it, but just a really intelligent and valuable asset to our denomination and to our mission board, but just quietly serving in this city and doing the Lord's work. But it's just a reminder that we have workers that probably we'll never hear about, but have done some great things for the Lord, and fluent in multiple languages. Was actually trained out of undergraduate degree, I think, from Cambridge or Oxford, and just extremely intelligent.
Great.
You see the table, you drink tea till you think it's coming out of your eyeballs.
Keep refilling it over and over again. They played a game. So for a while, I think it was Allison got down on the floor with the young son of Adelan and played a game for a while with him. I think he'd gotten a gift for the celebration, and they sat down and played on the floor for a good hour or so, just playing the game. So this is the entire team, just working from left to right. Crystal, the two sisters, Allison, the young lady too, Sonia. She's from the Sending Church in Atlanta that sent Brian and Crystal overseas, their home church in Atlanta. And then you all know the Persian-looking guy next to me. That's John, sort of raised behind Lewis there. John and Jason, right next on the other side of Lewis. Jason is a new pastor in Louisiana, and John is his right-hand person down there, helping him get acclimated to the church. John is very active in their youth group in their church in Louisiana, and it was just great to have them along. Really great, some great guys to have on the team. And then Adelan and his wife, and then Katie. Katie's from the Sending Church in Atlanta as well. So that was the entire team, and we had a great evening that night. So as part of Nowruz, actually on the 13th day of Nowruz, all Persians are required to go to a picnic, go out into a park, to take tents, to celebrate, to have fun, to get to spend time with their neighbors and their friends. So this was early on in Nowruz, so Adelan wanted to take us and have a picnic. Brian and he coordinated that. So we found a park, we went out with some blankets, and Adelan brought how many tons of chicken? it was a lot of chicken. A lot of chicken. He loves to cook, as Lewis mentioned, and brought all these goodies too. And it was another stuffing event that kind of day.
You'll notice that he had short sleeves on. He was the only one with short sleeves on. Hamburg is done, it's kind of like Seattle, the weather patterns. So it can, like even in the summer, it can be 90 one day and 60 the next, because of where they sit geographically. We had a picnic. It was not picnic weather. So most of us were in winter jackets. It was windy. There was a little bit of a sprinkle in the air, but they were committed. We were going to have a picnic. And so we were out there. There was actually another Persian group there to do the same. And part of that picnic is, you have this big spread, but you have to grill. You have to grill over an open flame. And they actually have wood charcoal. It's not charcoal briquettes like we use. So he pulled out this grill. He throws these wooden briquettes on it, and more lighter fluid than I've ever seen in my life. And I thought, man, it's windy. How you can get that started? And I thought, well, you might as well be from the South, buddy. You don't put that much lighter fluid on. And he got it lit, and he had tons of chicken. He had it marinated, he had it seasoned, and we just filled the grill with chicken and tea. If you ever thought, how are you going to cook tea at a picnic? They can cook tea at a picnic. They can cook tea anywhere. So we had hot tea at our picnic, and we had chicken and more chicken. They also had these roasted tomatoes. They would just take a tomato, put it whole on the skewer, and skewer, however you say it, and put it on the grill. Food was great. Excellent food, and he loved to cook. And he loved to make sure we kept eating. Some of us moved away from the food, and then there were dummies like me who sat down so he could keep filling my plate. And it was. We ate a lot of chicken that day. A lot of chicken, a lot of tomatoes. It was a lot of food, but he was happy to do what he was doing.
We played some games too. Before I go on, we were looking for the opportunity to meet some other Persian families, but we checked with the team first. We're like, should we go over there and introduce ourselves? And the team thought, probably best is today just to stay amongst ourselves. So, but it was a great afternoon, and really enjoyed the picnic and getting to know him.
And Larry spent most of his time interacting with Arlon's son, which was, I think, we didn't have as much opportunity to interact because of the weather with large pockets of people like the group that Rob and Chelsea and Casey, their work. It was interacting with his family, but I know Larry spent a lot of time with Arlon's son and Brian Crystal's daughter, Elise. Just being able to minister to them, and it was just an opportunity to see that there's a range of opportunities that we have in going on these trips. Sometimes you go for one purpose, and the Lord shifts it, and being able to see that. While we were here, what was interesting at the park was a group of Muslims showed up. They set up a table. They set up a table with free food. They set up a table with just a number of free items. And this was part of their regular activity. Part of the Islamic religion is giving of alms. And so they'll regularly set up in a park on the weekend to give alms, to give in a social way. And so there they were in the park to provide for anybody who needed it, food. I think there was water, there was clothing, there were all these items, basically just to give it away to whoever it was. And it was also a way for them to interact with those people. So it was interesting to see that close up, that here was this group with the Christian gospel. At the same time, you had an Islamic group there as well. And so you begin to see the conflict of opportunities are there, the different presences, even in a country that's extremely open and liberal like Germany.
So this is a service close to Crystal and Brian's home, and Sunday morning worship. Louis attended worship, Baye went and assisted Crystal in childcare, and had a great time upstairs, just playing with the kids, just like I would here. Do you want to talk a little bit about the service?
Yeah, the service was fully in Farsi, in their native language. So the songs are in Farsi. They have a song leader that will come and do the songs all in their original language. So we learned to sing in that language, which, you have to recognize that people come into our service who don't understand English, they're doing the same thing. So it gives you a perspective of, you can still get the sense of a song even if you don't understand the words. It was a good experience. A range of ages in this room, a range of experiences. Some people who have been in the country a short time, some have been in the country a long time. One of the fast tracks for German citizenship is baptism. One of the difficulties the church has had are false conversions. And so what they are very diligent about is making sure they're not quick to baptize, that they're not quick to get on that process, because when Germany had this big refugee surge, one of the ways they said you can quickly become a German citizen is to become a Christian. And so they were lining up the Lutheran churches, and lining up at the Catholic churches, and lining up at the Baptist churches. And unfortunately, even at the Baptist churches, what were they doing? They were baptizing them one after the other. Praise the Lord for revival. Well, they baptized them and they disappeared. Because all they needed was a piece of paper saying they were baptized. What they have been diligent about at this particular local church is to say, we are going to see genuine conversion. And so we're going to take longer to make sure that people are genuinely responding to the gospel, that this isn't just a way to German citizenship. It's caused them some difficulty, but I think it's good difficulty. They want to make sure people aren't just jobbing the system. But most of the people you see in this room are there because they genuinely want to grow in their faith. They have a midweek Bible study. I shared with our Wednesday night group that it really made me feel like I was at home because they do their song to a projection system through a computer, and everybody had a different key, everybody had a different volume level, kind of all over the place. And so this is like being back at Calvary on Wednesday night. We're just here to sing, we're here to fellowship, we're here to worship, and here to study, and that's what they do on Wednesday night. They worship together, they pray together, and then they study the Bible. So it's like what we do. They're just doing a different place, they're doing a different language, because they know that's what it takes to disciple people, to help them grow in their faith, whether they're fleeing Afghanistan and Iran, or we're here in Lynchburg, Virginia. Right? The means of grace are the same, regardless of where we are. And so they're trusting that God is going to be true to his promises. This particular Sunday, one of the team members from a church in Georgia preached the sermon, and a member of his church who fled Iran prior to the revolution in the 70s, translated for him. He has a ministry in the Atlanta area, and he does ministry all around the world to Muslims, and does ministry here in the States. Grew up in Iran, but prior to the revolution in the 70s, got out of the country, and now is an advocate for ministry to Muslims and understanding Islam all throughout the country, all throughout the world. A real dynamic man. But he speaks Farsi fluently. He's a member of this church, just a really strong Christian, and then he translated that particular Sunday for the English-speaking sermon.
Right. So we happened to capture this picture when the children were actually sitting and listening to Crystal tell the Bible story in German. So the children you see there, the children or grandchildren of the individuals in the service. But other than that, it was just like any other pretty much go for buddy time, where the kids were having fun, they were playing, speaking in German, and just having a great time. So it was really neat to see Crystal sharing from the Word in the Bible lesson that day in German, and just immediately you get a sense of these children really are engaging and starting to learn the fundamentals of the Christian faith at a young age. And I couldn't imagine them being taken away from their home country and coming to a place like this, but they had a sense of peace there that day, both in the church and in the children's space. So it was a great experience, really enjoyed that. And Elise was there. You can't see her in that picture. But before I move on, I want to just tell you a little story about Elise and Miles. They're the children of Brian and Crystal. And I got to spend time speaking with them as we would be walking to the train station, or we're walking down to the city center. Elise is very animated, and she likes to talk a lot, so we would engage with her. And I'm like, Elise, what's it like to be here? She says, well, I look at life as just two perspectives. There's before I was an MK and there's after I was an MK. And she says, for Miles, he's always been an MK. So, a missionary kid. And she was just really neat, her perspective, and she counted the years since she became a missionary kid. And they go to a German school, and they have to get there through several means. I think they walk to catch a bus, and then they take the bus to a train station. They take the train to the school. But in this,
By themselves.
Yes.
By themselves.
Right. They're challenged on a daily basis to defend their faith. And Elise shared this with me. And I'm like, what do you say? And she's like, I just say what the scriptures say, and why I believe what I believe. But at that young of an age, what is Elise? Is she 13?
She's 13,
14 years old. To be in a foreign country, be a missionary kid, they both know German really well, better than their parents. Actually, their parents laugh about that. And just to be able to defend their faith at that young of an age, 13, 14 years old, and know the scriptures that well, this is a real testament to not only their upbringing, but their parents, and the support they get at home. They're normal kids too. They get in trouble at times, but it's a great family. It was really great to see the entire family dynamic of this missionary family living in a foreign country, being faithful to the call of being missionaries, and just seeing their work that week was really incredible.
And Miles is actually in the middle of his flag football season. So he's in Germany and still able to play flag football. I talked to Brian this past week, and Miles was home from school early and talking about Atlanta Braves football, Atlanta Braves baseball, Auburn football, and his flag football season. So he's just a normal, everyday preteen kid. He's just serving with his parents overseas. So it's neat to see him. He was really excited when we were there. They're Auburn fans, and Auburn was making a deep run in the NCAA tournament. And I begged and pleaded for him to be able to stay up late to watch every Auburn game. And then finally one game was like a Sunday night, and he had to get up for school the next Monday morning. I said, sorry, buddy, I'm not winning that one with your mom. So just give up on that. He had to watch it on tape delay. This was Sunday afternoon after church. These three young men in the back, all sitting next to one another, are all refugees. The two on the left are Iranian, and then the one on the right is from Afghanistan. They all have excellent, powerful stories. You want to call them excellent stories. The man all the way on the left in the blue shirt fled the country with the prospect that he was married, had children, and the idea was that he would leave, he would get established in Germany, he would get set up, and then his wife and his children would come with him. It was all set up. He gets to Germany, he gets set up, everything organized. He calls back for his wife and children, and he's told, her family has told her that you have forgotten about her, that you have moved on, that you were involved with all these German women, and she was told to divorce you. So here he is. He's made all these commitments so that he can make it better for his family. And what he finds out is that his wife and his children basically have said, we're done with you, we're moving on. And here he is in a new country and basically just brokenhearted. And this isn't unique to him. This happens quite regularly, where they're encouraged to go, they're encouraged to do this to better their families, to better their lives. And then once they leave, a father-in-law, a mother-in-law, somebody basically says, oh, he's just going to fool around with women or some silly excuse. And they move on to something else. And so you hear these stories of broken relationships, of divorces. The young man in the black on the right, I'll let Larry tell the story of the young man in the middle, is Fawad. Fawad comes from a people group in Afghanistan that's known for their fierceness. The myth behind this people group is that they're from the lineage of Genghis Khan, that when Genghis Khan came through Afghanistan, that he and his warriors actually produced children with a certain tribe, and that's Fawad's comes from that particular tribe. They're known as fierce warriors, they're known as bitter people, angry people, and Fawad told that story, that he was full of bitterness, he was very committed to Islam, committed to Islamic principles, to the point that he was ready on the verge of taking another man's life. And it was at that point that near miraculously he came to faith in Christ. He left the country.
He left the country.
Yeah, getting ahead of
He left
myself.
the country.
He left the country. That his mother told him, before you do this and end up in an Iranian prison, you have to go away. Because she knew that if he did what he was going to do, he would end up in an Iranian prison, and that would be the end of it. So he left the country, ended up in Germany, ended up interacting with this group of workers. And it was right before Brian and Crystal left for their stateside that Brian kind of came to this conclusion that Fawad just didn't care. He had shared the gospel with them, he had sat through Bible studies, and Fawad just seemed different. Brian was here on stateside about 3 months, and he got a message from Allison saying, we've seen a complete change in Fawad. He's coming to Bible study, he's leading Bible study, he's praying, he's telling people in his housing complex about Christianity. Something has changed in him. What had changed is he had come to faith in Christ. That after years and time again, God had finally broken through the hardness of his heart. And this young man is on fire for Christ. He's gone for trainings. They have actually identified him as a potential leader, praying for him to feel the call of leading in some type of pastoral capacity. Just a very bold young man, and just has a great story to tell. And then this woman in the red, if you remember from the sermon that I preached right after I came back from the trip, she had a heartbreaking story. First time she tried to flee Iran, she paid extra to the smuggler, thinking that she was going to get on a boat that would protect her. That boat ended up capsizing in the Mediterranean Sea. She nearly died, ended up in an ICU unit in Athens, Greece. Nobody knew her. She didn't know anyone. Recovered from that and was sent back to Iran. Once she got back to Iran, her husband had since divorced her, had moved on to another wife, said he didn't love her anymore. She wasn't young enough. He wanted a younger woman. And from a religious perspective, you can do that. No big deal. Just say, I divorced you, moved on, no financial commitment to her anymore, you're done. She and her daughter saved up enough money, and they fled the country to Germany. And so they basically are rebuilding their lives. And these are people who had wealth. These aren't people of low substance in their original country. People who can talk about owning businesses, operating businesses, and doing things that we would consider substantive here, but they give all of that up to get away from the oppressiveness of these countries.
Thank you.
It's just a picture of the group.
Okay. So the young man in the middle of the three young men, his name is Hassan. And Hassan told us the story of, as he was growing up, he had met this young lady when he was a teenager. They had fallen in love. They had planned to get married. And he just was deeply in love with this girl. Think of your high school sweetheart situation. And one day, things had started to go south in Iran, and he had to flee. When he was coming to Germany with plans of making a better life for his future wife. He really believed he was going to marry her. And while he was gone, the family of the young lady had told her that he wasn't devout enough. He wasn't a good enough Muslim. And they actually had her married off to a 50-some-year-old man who had paid a diamond to take her. And this young man was just heartbroken. I mean, this is the girl he had planned on marrying, the girl he had fallen in love with. Here he is, he had fled the country to make a life for them, and then to find this out, and he was devastated, to say the least. Through coincidence, he met a gentleman on his right. His name's Barat. Barat wasn't a believer yet, but Barat told Hassan, he says, "You've got to come with me to this place that I attend. It's a church." He's like, "I don't know what's going on there, but I found peace in this place." It's the Holy Spirit, right? And so Barat eventually became a Christian. He brought Hassan along. Hassan found Christ. And just, it was a heartwarming story. But that's not the end of the story. About 3 months after we left, I got a message through Messenger that Hassan had met a girl from Afghanistan, actually, from Afghanistan. But what was even kind of neater in participating in this, or special, was that the gentleman on your right with the white hair, like mine, he is Iranian, and he is from the Sending Church in Atlanta. And we were asked to pray over Hassan that evening. This gentleman, Aziz, I think, or Aziz, and he was going to pray in Farsi first, and then I was to pray in English. And so Aziz prayed first. Of course, I don't understand Farsi at all, so I just went up, said my prayer out loud, and then Aziz looked at me afterwards and he said, "You know what just happened?" I said, "No." He said, "You prayed the same exact prayer that I did in English that I had prayed in Farsi." And that I just like, wow. What an amazing God we serve. And then 3 months later, to get the picture of his now future new wife, she is a Christian. Her name is Azita. And there she is next to Hassan. Look at the smile on Hassan's face. And to have the Lord just bless him like that is just incredible. And
this is them making the engagement announcement in church. Their process is very similar to the way it used to be in our culture a couple generations ago, where their courting happens around the church family. So most of their dating is going to happen Sunday morning church functions, around other families in the church. And so the way it's announced is Sunday morning in front of the church to their church family. They're officially engaged, and this begins their betrothal period. And so that's this picture. And just the joy coming out of a man that thought he'd never find love again, thought that he was done, and that was on it. It was going to be written on the story.
God had a different story.
This is a picture of the housing units. This is one of the housing units, the closest one to where the workers live. A different picture, different angle. You can kind of see the outline of these units. Each one of these blocks is one unit. So they expect 4 people to live in that unit. And that's just one big room. Each floor of units, so there could be anywhere from 4 to 8, shares one bathroom. So do the math. So 4 times 4 is 16. 8 times 4 is a lot more than 16 in one bathroom. They share one bathroom, they share one kitchen, and one common space. And that's your housing. They do have heating, they do not have air conditioning. So if it's hot, you just hope that you can crack a window. But they are metal storage units. Like I said, I think there's a house being built in the forest area that is a similar design. But that's what the Germans decided. This is the most functional way to do this. You can stack them up. They do have playgrounds, and some of them, but not at all of them. And they are provided housing. They're not insulated well. This is not heavily insulated. So when it gets extremely cold, the heating bills go up because these are people just like us. They want to stay warm. And so it becomes an issue. Some of the housing units, they didn't think through placement. This is a picture from a train station. So what the Germans did is they just found pieces of land that weren't being used and put housing developments on them. So imagine you're a refugee, you don't know the language, you don't have a job, you don't have a car, and they drop you in this place. If you look closely, you can actually see a lady pushing a stroller. So imagine you're a mom with children, you have to go get groceries, you have to just do the normal things, and a lot of their food doesn't have preservatives, so you have to go to the grocery store every day or at least every other day just to get basic necessities. And you have to get on a train, you have to get on a bus, everything's public transportation. And what the Germans did is they just found pieces of land. They didn't think through how are people going to get different places. They didn't think through placement of people together. So in a lot of these housing complexes, you have Muslims, but they're different Muslim groups. So you have Shia Muslims with Sunni Muslims. That doesn't work. Right? All Muslims are not created equal. And so you had issues where people weren't getting along with each other. You had infighting in these housing complexes. And it just created a lot of social issues. And so what began to happen is the Germans faced complex issues. All of the housing complexes don't look the same. So some of them have been more developed. These are those same storage units with an outside surfacing and tin roofs. If you look between these two buildings, you'll see a lot of bikes. This is what you would call a side business by some of the refugees. They go around and they find bikes that are unattended. Unattended is another word for stealing. They fix up the bikes and then they resell them. But when you have a lot of men who had jobs, bring them to a country, they have no jobs, this is the kind of stuff that happens. And that's what Germany's facing, is how do we keep this under wraps? They've also, this is a picture of Brian and Fawad. This is the housing development that Fawad lives in. We were able to walk through it with him, pray through it. While we were there, though, it created a rather difficult situation for him because somebody actually came up and asked him, why are these people here to talk to you? And it actually created a situation where they have told stories of Christians being injured, being attacked, being beat up, because people find out they've left to go to church, they've left to go to Bible study, that for them, it's a dangerous thing to make a commitment to Christ. And so we have to remember that commitment. This is the next step up for Germany. They've built these permanent housing complexes, but these are 2-bedroom apartments. Or no, 2-room apartments. 2-room apartments. And they'll put upwards to 6 people in one of these 2-room apartments. Essentially, they're building ghettos. They don't want to call them that, but if you think through how we've done things, unfortunately, even here in the U.S., that they've built these large pockets of housing, and they've put people there, and you kind of have these small communities, and thinking through what can unfortunately happen if they don't have the right oversight in these areas. So while it's a step up for them, it still can create issues down the road. And so just thinking through from the missionaries' perspective, how can they best serve these refugees? How can they go into housing complexes like this? Because this housing complex is easier to go into than the refugee developments. That these have more open doors. And so how do you go in? How do you help create ideas of family development, family skills? Because the cultures they're coming out of, they don't have any of that. A lot of it is heavy-handed, there's not relational concepts, there's not family concepts, and so a lot of what they're doing is just teaching those types of principles.
Just Crystal's ministry around women and children, and she's trying to help in that regard, is to minister specifically to women coming out of these countries and to show them their worth through the scriptures. A lot of them aren't believers yet, but also just socially, how can they do things and be better and stronger living in this foreign land in Germany. And so please keep that ministry in your prayers. Crystal's asked that we pray for that ministry, not only a place to meet, but the women that she and others are ministering to will be blessed, and their children as well. God will work through that.
One thing to pray about, we do have opportunities for a continued service to this particular area. The discipleship need is significant. That there is an extreme lack. The Iranian church is fairly well developed. They have songs, they have books, they have resources. That those coming out of an Iranian background, there is a history of it, because before the Iranian Revolution, there was a strong Christian presence in Iran. Iran has an actual Christian history to a certain degree. Afghanistan, that was all wiped clean by the Taliban. The Taliban essentially went through with a brutal eraser and destroyed any idea of Christianity from Afghanistan, when in reality, there was a great Christian tradition in that land. I mean, long historical markers of a Christian presence. So what they're trying to build is a sense of Christian community among these refugees from Afghanistan. Part of doing that is getting them together to help them see they're not alone. They were able to do a conference just a few years ago to gather them, to do discipleship, to help them to see that the movement among their people is significant. And what they're planning is this coming year, in 2020, to do another conference, and just try to start doing them regularly. That conference will be Memorial Day weekend. So I'm giving you a heads up because God wants some of you in this room to go on that trip. I will speak His will into your life. I'm not Pentecostal, but I'll just take a guess at that. So Memorial Day weekend, I think it's May 21st through the 24th. What they're going to do is have a conference for these refugees from Afghanistan, and what the skill set is going to be brought. Children's ministry, working in a kitchen, just doing general help around this conference, just being there as an encouragement. So think of anything that we've done with our conferences here at the church, or if you've helped with one of our larger fellowship events. If you have been able to help with any of those, you can help on this trip. So, you need to get a passport. You need to get a passport now. And once you have your passport, the money part, don't worry about that. The Lord will take care of the money part. I'll promise you that. The church will take care of it. The Lord will take care of it. Just get your passport and we'll get you on the way. But they're going to need help. They're planning for about 125 of these refugees, of these Christians that are in country, and then we'll have about 25 team members to help with the support from our church and a few others, and plus some workers that are there in the country. So pray through that, think about that, start thinking through. We'll also have the group going back to do the outreach with the country in Central Asia as well. But just some really good opportunities to go serve with people who need to hear the gospel and grow in their faith.
Are there any dangers in traveling over there as far as diseases or floodings or, that kind of thing?
No, Germany's very safe. I mean, anything that could happen in New York City or Chicago, that's the same danger you'd be in over there. So, I mean, if you don't want to go to Chicago, then you don't want to go there, which might be some of you. But I think that's where a place like Hamburg is, as far as international trips, it's low on the list of security issues.
It's 1.8 million people, so things happen.
Oh, yeah, this is always movement in groups. And this particular trip would be at a conference center in a more rural area. So it would even be outside of the major metropolitan area. This will be a little more. This will be a little more involved than that. Yeah. This will be a little more involved than that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And part of that is the language barrier. That because of the language barrier, we cannot do a lot of direct ministry. But there are opportunities to do things that they will build it. Because they do speak English, and when they see English speakers come in, they want to use their English. And so when you walk in, they're going to want to interact with you. They're going to want to get your, if you have a smartphone, they're going to want you to download WhatsApp so that they can get your cell number and they can text you back and forth on WhatsApp once you leave. They can, make a friend and work on their English, get to know you, send you pictures of themselves. You send pictures to them. They want to build. They're very relational people. They're extreme. That's their culture. They're very friendly.
The church you visit, were some of them already Christians when they came from Afghanistan, or were they all converts? Were they converted to Christianity?
It was a mixture. I mean, some were Christians before they came, and that was the reason they fled. That they fled for religious persecution, and like Barak, that Larry mentioned, the reason he first came to the church was to get a baptism certificate.
Yeah.
He told us that. But I started coming to church so I could get my baptism certificate and become a German citizen, but God changed my heart. That he came for bad motivations, and God used the bad motivation to bring him to Christ. So I think we can see that the Lord works in a variety of ways. But yeah, you have some who were Christians already, and once they got there, they needed to find a Christian fellowship to connect to. Others came as Muslims. But you will hear a regular story of those coming out of these countries that when they have the opportunity, the first thing they ask is, where can I find a different message? Because it's such an oppressive feeling that they're coming out of. Like these outreach that we do with the board, Rob and Chelsea and Casey participated in. They'll have people get off the plane to these cities, and they'll say, where are the groups handing out those cards? Because what they've been told when they left Iran is, don't go to those people handing out that information. Avoid them. So that's our cooperative program money going to good efforts. And the Iranian government knows about it. That's how effective it is. But they know, like, if the government hates it that much, it must be really important. So they're coming off the plane saying, I want to hear this message. Because what I've been told my whole life by the imam, it ain't working. It is empty, it is oppressive, it is draining my soul. So whatever you have, it has to be better than that. And that's what you hear, the regular story of these individuals coming to faith. Is Islam it has no substance. It's draining them. It just leads to bitterness in many cases.
They were also told that Christians are not to be trusted, that stay away from Christians, they're bad people, and they find just the opposite, that we're loving people, we love on them, and so they know they've been told a lie their whole life. But Christ shows them a different way, and they find the truth.
Because the Southern Baptists or the Baptists are bigger financially in the program.
Oh yeah, this is all funded by cooperative program money Lottie Moon money. So all of what you're seeing, when we give the cooperative program, when we give the Lottie Moon, this is what funds it. Yes. Yeah. And that's why we put such a heavy emphasis on those areas. Because if you just think about bare numbers, you just say we have, and there's probably more than that, but say we have 5,000 Christians in Lynchburg. We have less than that many overseas workers in the rest of the world as Southern Baptists. So if we have 5,000 Southern Baptists in Lynchburg, that's 5,000 Southern Baptists for, say, 200,000 people. We have 5,000 Southern Baptists for the other 6.5 billion around the world. So when we look at our cooperative program giving, that's why we have to put so much emphasis on it. Because a dollar given to send a missionary is far more effective than anything we can do with it here. Because there's such a greater need. There's such a greater need overseas when there's all of us here to proclaim the message. And so the perspective is always helpful to reinforce why we give to those means. And the Lottie Moon Christmas offering. That when you give the Lottie Moon, none of that money goes for administration. That all goes directly to our overseas workers. So if you put $100 in Lottie Moon, all of that money goes to projects like this. It doesn't go to pay anybody in Richmond. It doesn't go to pay any administration. It goes to pay for projects and ministry needs. So you can always guarantee that if you put something in for Lottie Moon, it's going to pay for missions needs, which is Southern Baptists, that is probably one of our most effective things that we can do. Which I'll get my Southern Baptist star for that little show. Any final questions? If you have any others, come up and ask us. But like I said, opportunities ahead to go overseas. At some point, I'll be heading over to do a divorce seminar, divorce and remarriage seminar, because there's just so much of that there. And there's just a need for them to do that. So there'll probably be another opportunity for a smaller team to go when I go to do that. But we're still working on dates for them as well. But the bigger seminar, the bigger trip will be Memorial Day weekend in 2020. So look at your calendar. If that works, we would love for you to go.
Yes, that's great. Father, your word is powerful, it's beautiful, it's strong. We thank you for giving us your word, and thank you for the command to share the gospel both here and around the world. Thank you for the work that's being done in Hamburg and in the Hamburg area. Thank you for all the ways that you just create these miraculous stories of salvation, Father, and how you draw people to yourself through your Son, Jesus Christ. We thank you for this opportunity that we get to be a part of your story. We thank you for your love, and most of all, we thank you for Jesus Christ. In his name we pray. Amen.